Welcome to another episode of the Thrive Now Show. I'm really excited today to be interviewing Kerri Hummingbird. Kerri is a soul guide and a host of the Soul Nectar Show. She's an international best-selling author of The Second Wave, Transcending the Human Drama. And she's an award-winning best-selling book of Awakening to Me, One Woman's Journey to Self-Love, which she describes in the early years of her spiritual awakening. Miss Hummingbird inspires people to lead their lives wide awake with an authenticity, passion, and purpose that positively impacts others. She catalyzes mind shifts that transform life challenges into gifts of wisdom. Her latest book, also a #1 international bestseller, is called Love is Fierce, Healing the Mother Wound, and describes the most direct path to spiritual enlightenment. She is now writing her next book called Inner Medicine. Welcome, Kerri. It's a pleasure to be with you today.
No, I'm so grateful to be here with you today as well, Jennifer, and everyone who's listening.
So I'd love to just start out with, I know a little bit about your background, and I know that you've had kind of this tumultuous, childhood and early or young adult experiences, particularly with mental health. And so I would love to ask you, tell the audience and the viewers what, the experiences that you've had and how you actually rose up from it.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I guess I'll start in the most poignant moment. I'm sitting in my therapist's office. I'm about, you know, um, late 30s, and I have two little children, in my life, and a husband of from the time I was 22, so a really long relationship. But I'm sitting here after, 2 decades of psychotherapy weekly and 10 years or 13 years, 10 years at that time of taking the not feeling pills, the ones they prescribe you when
Mhm.
you get out of postpartum depression and they give you the pills to take. And I'm sitting there because I've been coming to therapy because I can't get along in my marriage. I don't feel satisfied in my life. I feel depressed. I feel sad. I've been crying all the time. And I've started to have an affair. I've started to reach outside my marriage for comfort and support. And so I really want to solve this. This has been going on for decades, in my life, and I really want to get to the bottom of it. And as I'm sitting there, hoping for, beautiful answer, like, give me the answer, what's wrong with me? And she tells me, well, we think that you have borderline personality disorder. And I stop for a second and I go, wow, that sounds really serious. And I feel kind of like this thud inside of me, like, like that's very depressing. So as I leave there, I of course go to the internet and look it up, and I find this Wikipedia article, which has since been radically altered, thank goodness. But and it basically outlines all the checklists, like how do you know that you're this kind of person? And it's basically like you're like Glenn Close in Fatal Attraction. This kind of person. I'm like, I don't see myself that way, but what's what it's telling me I am. And I just got that did not help me feel better about myself. It actually plummeted me into this deep, dark despair. And I really couldn't stop my behavior at the time. Like I felt like something was taking me over and I couldn't make it stop. And I wanted it to stop. I've always been a really empowered person, but I've always also had this sort of like dalliance with psychotherapy, right? I mean, I remember when I was 15, and I had gotten dramatic, as teenagers often do, and my parents brought me to a psychiatrist because I had taken some Tylenol with codeine and they had to pump my stomach, because they found me with a boy and I was ashamed and all of this kind of stuff. They pumped my stomach, and then I started seeing a psychiatrist. And at the end of my time with him, he said, "Well, you know, we think you have bipolar, but we're not going to put that on your record. We're just going to say you're manic depressive." I mean, like from the time I was 15, I was being given these labels and this solution to solve my problems. So a few years after my diagnosis, the second diagnosis, and it didn't get better, it got worse, as you can imagine, because now in a way, I have a reason why I'm broken.
Yeah. And the system
And
is telling you that you're broken and that you need to be fixed. And the way to be fixed is typically medication.
exactly, and repeated weekly psychotherapy sessions, how convenient, like just keep coming here and literally sit on the couch, vent your story while the therapist sits there and take notes on a little scratch pad, like literally the tiniest little chicken scratch across the page as she documented every little thing I was saying. It I just thought, a couple more years of that, I was ready to die. And this is really the moment that I woke up, Jennifer, because I remember having nightmares, like waking up in the middle of the night after having these, that heart pounding nightmares where in my nightmare, I was walking up in this ancient house, seemed like a Victorian house, and I'm walking up this spiral staircase. The carpet is threadbare, the paintings on the wall have those gilded frames, but it all looks really dusty and kind of dirty. And there's like this kind of dusty crystal chandelier hanging down, 3 stories down the center of the spiral staircase. And as I'm walking up, I head to this room and I have this sense of dread, like whatever I'm going to find in this room is not good, and I'm entering the room anyway, because that's what happens in these dreams. And I go to this mirror and I stand in front of it. And all of a sudden my throat is gripped. I can't, I'm being choked. I can't scream. I'm trying to scream in my dream and I can't make a sound. And I look in this last time that the nightmare happened, I look in the mirror and I see this, like this shrew, this angry shrew, and she just screams at me, "I hate you." And then I wake up in a sweat. And I think, I look at me, I'm so broken. This being in my dream hates me. I probably hate me. I'm crying on the floor in my bathroom every night, like eat, pray, love, like, please God help me. And I don't know that I'm worthy to be a mom. Like my boys might be better off without me at this point is what I'm thinking. And then I have to make this decision. Am I going to stay on the planet and keep trying? Because I've been trying like since I was 15. So it's a really long time to be trying every single week. Am I going to keep trying or am I going to give up? And in a lot of soul searching, I decide I'm going to stay. I'm going to stay. And then I see this quote about the definition of insanity is keep doing the same thing and think it's going to work this time. And I say, what have I been doing for so long that I think is going to work that hasn't worked? And I go, well, my marriage, psychotherapy, and pills. And so I say, well, I guess I'll just be bad and I'll leave all those things and I'll go ahead and be bad. And I'm going to stop trying to be good. Forget it. I'm out. So I walked out of all 3 of those things. I stayed for my kids. And the first night that I was in my own place, my own little house that I was renting, and the boys were upstairs, it was my turn to have them that first night. And I'm in my bathtub with candlelight and bubbles. And I couldn't even remember the last time I'd taken a bath. And I'm like, I'm free. Like I felt instantly better. I had 0 regrets leaving my marriage. And that was the toughest thing to admit. It's like, wow, that was so painful for me actually. And now I'm better just by changing locations, just by making that decision to live, even if I'm me, even if I'm a horrible person, choosing I'm going to live. And I'm going to care for myself too. I'm going to take this bath. I'm going to have a glass of wine. I'm going to look at the flame on the candle. Like, whew. And, as these things happen, Jennifer, I mean, what precipitated right before I made that choice to move out was I had a spirit vision, one of my first real authentic spirit visions where I saw the end of the rope. Everyone talks about the end of the rope, like the ship's not, like the end of the rope. I I actually saw the end of the rope. Like I saw this giant ship's knot, like on this giant rope, and it just went poof. And I knew that's the end of the rope. It was like, end of story, close that book,
Move on.
jump out of this crazy place. Something new is about to start. And within 6 months, I had a mentor, I had a yogi with hair down to his hips that played vinyasa in yoga class. And I mean, as my spiritual coach, and I started studying shamanism. I picked up this little book called The Four Agreements
Mhm.
by Don Miguel Ruiz. I started reading this. I'm like, I wish I'd had this book in third grade. And some different part of me started waking up, the part that's empowered, the part that knows that I have the power to change my life, that I don't need to be a victim or to accept other people's disease map or book of fate prognosis for me, but that I, within me, have the power to write my own book of destiny. And so I set about that, and all the teachers I needed and everything came together over the next 10 years. And so like, here it is, like maybe it's 2022, I left in 2011. So, it's like 11 years later, here I am, international best-selling author of several books,
Could you imagine?
podcast host.
Could you imagine that back then?
No, I didn't really feel like, I mean, I was trying to sell my art and I was having a struggle with that. So, you know, I I didn't never thought anybody really wanted anything of mine, wanted to buy my art. I mean, people did buy my art and they loved it. So let's not be too dramatic. I mean, people always told me, I love your art, Kerri. But I always focused on the parts where they didn't like me more than the parts where they did like me, right? So what I actually needed, I realized, was a completely different map. And so within like a year of me leaving, I did a double dose. I had two different spiritual teachers I was working with. One was a Toltec teacher, beautiful Toltec teacher that taught me fire walking and a lot of other beautiful sacred practices along the four agreements and how to reclaim my power as a warrior goddess. And the other teacher was teaching me Andean shamanism and how to perform energy medicine. And so the two of these together were like lightning. It's like, I was like, wow, I have the power to be the author of my own dream of life, as the Toltec teach. And not only that, but I can change my book of fate through this energy medicine. I can heal my inner child. I can heal my ancestry. I can step forward and write a whole new destiny for my boys. Like, I don't have to be what they told me I was. I can be who I choose to be. And so within a really short time, by the time I started those two teachings, I'd also had this vision of with a hummingbird. And I realized, okay, I'm changing my name to Kerri Hummingbird. And I started putting that on social media, and people were like, oh my God, you're like putting that out. It was when I put it out on LinkedIn, everyone thought I had lost my mind, all these contacts from Silicon Valley that I'd worked as a high-tech consultant for, 20 years. They're like, oh my gosh, she's lost her mind now completely. She is going by Kerri Hummingbird. But like, I was finally being myself. I was being me finally, without worrying about what other people thought about me. And and it was like my life completely turned around, Jennifer. And now here I am teaching inner medicine. And for me, inner medicine is exactly that. It's not the outer medicine. I don't need someone's drugs. I don't need someone's diagnosis. I don't need someone's opinion. I need a sacred witness who
Mhm.
will listen to my story, witness it, and then
And not judge.
gently, not judge me, and then gently, lovingly, kindly invite me to maybe rewire some of those stories, to give myself more access to a higher potential, not to diminish my potentials, as in the Western psychotherapy model does, diminishes potentials into a dead end, as I experienced, slammed up against that brick wall, like, well, that's the end of that story. And I decided that's not my story. I'm not stopping there. That can't be the end,
You
because
took
it's not happy.
Exactly. You took your power back. And I think that's why I was so excited to speak to you today, because although our stories are different, I grew up having a lot of anxiety and a lot of fear, but I didn't understand it. Like I didn't understand it. And I would have all these different symptoms and I would, express them to my mom. And I would go back and forth to doctors and they're like, there's nothing wrong with her. But it was just like something was going on physically in my body. I'd have heart palpitations. I would literally hyperventilate. I would have all of these physical symptoms. And fast forward many, 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 many years later, I was gifted with Dr. Brian Weiss's book, Many Life, Many Masters. And not knowing or not really believing at the time that there's such a thing as past lives. And so here I am in this physical world, in this lifetime, working through a lot of ancestral depression, family members that committed suicide, people that, were pretty well off financially and then, lived through the depression and lost everything, like all of this trauma and all of this drama. And, I too, ended up in a therapist office and did, worked with a psychologist and psychiatrist for many, many years. And I was told I'd be on medication for the rest of my life. And although there were points where the medication took the edge off, the truth is it never really helped. And then fast forward when I was trying to deal with my experience being 15 feet from the first of two bombs at the Boston Marathon bombing, I'm like trying to make sense of it all. And I was told I had to go through this immersion therapy, which basically is you relive your story over and over and over again to desensitize you. And I would literally, I'm 42 years old at the time, I would literally scream and cry and beg, please don't make me tell the story again. I don't want to tell this story. And they're like, no, this is what it's going to take to heal. I did that for 6 months before I had enough courage to trust myself going, this is friggin' torture. I'm supposed to come to this appointment to feel better, and I felt worse. And fortunately, I did not take medication at that time. So, because I had enough awareness and enough skill that I could manage, my anxiety, my fear, and all of that other stuff through natural breath, through visualization, through meditation, all of those different techniques. But I will tell you, I think this is it where so many people misunderstand and put labels on whether it's kids or young adults or adults. And then they're, what I would call sent into this impervial, prison sentence that they're supposed to spend the rest of their life in this kind of modality with no room or help for improvement, really. And so I'm so inspired that you had the courage for yourself and your two boys to actually do what your soul was nudging you to do. And then you went on this path. And then it's not until we take that leap of faith, right? People often say, well, I'll do it someday when, such and such appears. I'm like, that's not how it works. It only works when you have the courage to take the first step and have the courage to say, you know what, enough with this chapter of my life, or enough with this story of my life. I'm going to create a new story. And with that, now, talk about, you go on this spiritual journey, you go on this inward journey, you take back your power, you start to step into your power, you write 3, best-selling books, you're working on your 4th, you now have a very successful podcast, and you appear to be thriving in life. Is that a true statement?
I feel like I'm thriving. I mean, I've got a beautiful love partnership. He's a masseuse. He massages me all the time. I mean, ladies out there, you want to be massaged? I mean, I feel like I have a really awesome life. Yeah, I have a beautiful partner. He listens to me. He works with me. We go to sacred pilgrimages together. He's on the path. He does his work. Like, I can't ask for more than that. I mean, my 2 beautiful sons are doing well. They're very independent, and I think that's a good sign. They're super independent in their lives, and they've just gone off on their own journeys and doing their thing. And I miss them. I have regrets. I wish that I had been able to solve the puzzle faster, because of course, as moms, like, I feel like we all want to remember like every single little moment and be in total presence with all of the cute things that they do. And then we get in the thick of it and it's like, oh my God, this is such a slog. And then we lose consciousness. And I was self-involved because like I said, I was really struggling with mental chatter, right? Mental chatter. Like you, I love that you brought up Brian Weiss, because I was also this whole life I've been healing and reintegrating after really traumatic past life.
Mhm.
So, that kind of wisdom helps you to see, oh, that's why I always felt this way about myself, because there wasn't really necessarily a reason besides my first 5 years of life being traumatic. But I mean, like there's a lot of reasons we can find, right, why things are the way that they are. But yeah, I mean, you have to decide at some point. And for me, I decided I am so sick of this, of living this way. Like I'm sick of myself, at this point. I'm like, I cannot stand this because I am not this. I am not going to let myself go down. I have to heal. And my mother's heart was calling me forward. Like, I love my son so much. I mean, my sons mean the world to me. So I was like, I have to heal for my sons, if not for myself. And then it became about me. So yeah, I feel like I'm living a life now that I only could live because I had the courage to be truthful with myself. I had the courage to face my shadows. I had the courage to reach beyond what the authorities were telling me was the way to heal. I had the courage to get out there and explore and find out what might actually work. I had the courage to tell the whole system, you're wrong. This isn't working. And I'm not crazy. It's not working.
It's not.
So,
I mean, suicide's on the rise since COVID, started 2.5 years ago, almost 3 years ago now. Suicide's on the rise amongst all age groups, right? Depression's on the rise. People are taking more medication, all this other stuff. Like, I personally believe the system is broken, and it's time for a change. And this is what I actually want to ask you next is, what do you perceive it's going to take for humanity to rise above the systems that I perceive keep us in survival mode? It could be, you might be barely surviving, you might be in the middle of the road surviving, or you might be surviving better. But from your perspective, what's it going to take to transcend beyond our survival-based consciousness into thriving consciousness?
yeah, absolutely. Well, we have to go beyond the mind.
Say more.
Simple answer. Um, most people, and me, when I was really, really struggling, I was struggling because I was trapped in my mind. I was living from my chin up. And I don't even include my throat's not included. I was living from here up because your throat chakra is actually like your seat of command, your soul's ability to speak the word into being and to command things to happen in the universe, right? But when you're operating from your chin up, which is most people on the planet, especially Western society right now, is chin up. It's all mind. They think, I think, therefore I am, is like probably the worst advice we ever got as humanity, was to think like that. So, because this is the personality. So when we operate from personality, from human, temporary human being, with the idea that we have one life, that we are temporary beings, that we are separate from each other, not only separate from each other, but separate from the planet, separate from the earth, separate from this consciousness that infuses us, that makes us move and act and become and breathe. This, when we think we're separate, life is really hard and really dense and a struggle. And we're also super self-involved when we have that state of consciousness, meaning it's all about our survival and the survival of whoever is us. And we're living in the shadows. And one of those shadows that's been identified by ancient Chinese I Ching wisdom. One of those shadows is the shadow of reaction. And that shadow of reaction is what makes us tribalistic, what makes us versus them, what makes us polarized, and what makes us decide that, if there's like a pile of food, I'm taking it all for me. Like when we were going through COVID, everybody had the experience, of going to the grocery store and trying to find one freaking roll of toilet paper. And some family had hoarded like all of it because they were tribalistic and in reaction, and not thinking like my neighbor might need some toilet paper too. So it's like this way of thinking, like I'm going to get it all for myself. And and so it's not even about religion, folks, because there's people that go to church that do that. Like they go to their church and they sit in the pew and they go on Sunday, and then they go to Costco and they take all the toilet paper, and don't let anybody have any. So it's not about religion. This is about an understanding of yourself beyond the mind. And that's the thing that healed me, Jennifer. I went to my first teacher, I told you, my warrior goddess teacher, and she said, we must reach beyond our limited idea of who we are in order to heal, because we're not going to heal from the personality. We're not going to heal from the limited person that we think we are in this moment that lives for, 50 years, maybe 70 years. We're not going to accomplish very much from that self. What will heal us is connecting to something bigger. And that's where I started learning about earth spirituality. And both of the traditions I studied, like I told you, a year after I left my marriage, both of those are earth spirituality traditions. One of them comes from the Andes Mountains, which is now the spiritual center of the earth. It has shifted from the Himalayas into the Andes Mountains now. And so that earth spirituality tradition teaches us that we're connected with the mountains. We're connected with the water in our bodies. It's connected to the oceans. We're connected with our breath and the air that everyone breathes. In fact, we're all breathing each other all the time. So our idea of being separate and independent agents without any connection with others or our planet is false. I mean, our very bodies are created from Earth. So how could we be separate from Earth? So we can think we're separate. And when we live in our minds, we can create a lot of chaos. And we look at the world. This is a world created by the mind. So now we need to move beyond the chin. Like we need to go down. And I know everyone said this, like I go down those 12 inches to the heart, but we got to all the way down to the toes, actually. Toes.
All the way down. Well, I would even say even
Earth.
beyond toes, right? Like to be able to anchor in to Mother Earth, to Gaia, really. Because once we do that and we truly allow our full essence into being in the physical realm of being human, we literally become agents of change. We become a tuning fork, and things absolutely have to shift, as long as we're standing for something new. I feel, I just turned 51 and I'm like, I want, I love Gandhi's quote, be the change that you want to see in the world, because I feel we're overdue. It's overdue for humanity to actually let go of the systems that got us to this place. They no longer serve us. They're not going to take us into the next phase of our evolution. It's time to rebuild newly, where everyone gets to recognize that they have the ability to thrive in whatever that looks like for them.
And the thriving is a surrender. Thriving is a surrender. So it's the genius that is necessary now to turn things around on this planet for the survival of our species. That genius that's necessary is not going to come from the mind.
So say more to that. So for those people that are out there listening, well, wait a minute. Kerri's here talking about something. She's kind of off her rocker here. And by the way, I'm right there with you, just so you know. But wait a minute.
Welcome to the world that's right side up. Yeah.
Exactly. We're talking about, we've been indoctrinated to believe it's about mindfulness, and it's about our thoughts and our beliefs and all of that. And I've done so much work on myself and my mind and my thoughts and my beliefs, and I still didn't transcend to the level, of which I have by truly embodying and surrendering and letting go of those false beliefs and those paradigms. But say more.
I mean, I never understood why they called it mindfulness, because it's actually about mind emptiness. It's not mindfulness, okay? Like the ego loves mindfulness because then your mind is full of thoughts, and then there's no room or space for your spirit, your energy body, your soul. I mean, the brilliance comes from the soul. It doesn't come from the ego. Like as much as the ego wants to be the face of the brilliance, like it is not. The soul is the brilliance. And the soul is the one that's timeless, eternal, lives outside of the pacha. Karo people call it the pacha. The pacha means the time and the space. The pacha is the place where the time and the space meet. Well, we are in the pacha. We are in the pacha mama, Mother Earth. We're in pacha mama. And so when we're in Pachamama, we're in the eternal, we're in the moment where time actually has control of us. But when we step outside of time through our souls, which is the light that infuses your body. It's the auric field. And everybody knows we have an auric field now. I mean, that's like, they've proven it. They've shown it on cameras. So like everybody, it's proven science, like get over it. So your soul auric field, that is what can be leveraged to open you to the timeless self that you are. And we can learn about our energy in our body and how our energy moves. So, you know, back to these diagnoses and the things that they were noticing and the way that they defined it. Now, the way that they defined it was through a disease label, right? And so that's the disease map. That's the map that I'm saying needs to be tossed out. What they were noticing was indicators that there was some skill set that needed to be learned. That's what they were actually noticing. For example, they were noticing when I was 15 that I had really, really high highs emotionally and really, really low lows emotionally. They were noticing that I was on a big pendulum swing between my emotions. Now, were I to go back to that psychiatrist and say anything to him, I would say, here's what I invite you to explore, to share with your clients, is a skill on how to ground their energy so that they can hold more of that potency of that energy that's coming through them. Because what I realized is that emotion is like energy. It's a lot of energy that's flowing through your body. And as it flows through your body, it's like can take you out. Like it can really submerge you under an ocean of, like, say you're having grief. But if you learn how to ground yourself to Mother Earth, just like a house has an electrical system and it needs to have a grounding wire in order for the electricity to function in the house. Otherwise the electricity will short out, it'll fritz. Someone with big emotional swings, like they tend to diagnose as bipolar or something like that, all that really is an inability to process the amount of energy that's coming through the physical body. So in order to process more energy coming through the physical body, we need to ground ourselves and learn how to strengthen our capacity to hold the energy, to hold space for the energy that's flowing through us. That's really all it is. It's a skill that needs to be learned.
And to that end, there's also a knowing of when you start to take in more energy, whatever unstuck energy or stuck energy or dense energy naturally comes up to be released. So some people think there's something wrong when, you know, you're bringing in higher sources of light frequency, and now all of a sudden you're experiencing, you know, you're crying for no reason. You might not be aware of why you're crying, or you're angry for no reason, or any of those things. And all of a sudden, you know, we're taught, or at least I was taught, there's something wrong with you. And then you stop and you resist that actually new potent energy that's actually here to heal and to rise you up and to evolve your soul and your human consciousness, actually. And so we misunderstand. So there's a lot of misinformation out there too about when we're shifting and pivoting. All of these things happen and it's normal.
It's normal. I mean, when you have a beautiful experience and you're ascended in your vibration and your heart is wide open and you're just like, wow. What happens is that ascension of energy, that ascension of vibration is a new level for you. Mm-hmm. And for your human self, it feels good, but it also feels kind of unsafe, because if I'm this open, I could be hurt. And so that protector part of your psychology inside your subconscious that's protected you from being hurt since you were little comes forward and tries to clamp it all back down again too. Like, no. This is way too open for this. We can't allow this these loopholes in the wall in the defense system, and tries to like rebuild that defense system around this new beautiful energy that's come in. So, and at the same time, just like you said, when all this light comes into our system, that's a higher amount of light or a higher vibration than we've had before, it's like it stirs up the mud that's caked at the bottom of our being.
Mhm.
The things that we didn't want to face, like let's say the 13 years that I took not feeling pills, and I was still having feelings, but I wasn't feeling them.
Mhm.
And because I didn't feel them, they got stuck in my body,
Mhm.
in my tissues, deep down inside of me. And so when I stopped taking those pills, I would start grieving. And then I would think, oh my gosh, I can't stop taking these pills because as soon as I start taking them, I start crying. Meanwhile, my body is like, thank goodness she stopped taking the inhibitor so she can actually purge from the body what's become toxic and actually cry and grieve and get it out. Like there's no bypassing those emotions that we don't prefer. There's no bypassing grief. You can't just skip over it with a pill. You're
Or,
human. You need to feel it.
well, and here's the thing, and if you don't, you're eventually going to succumb to disease, whether that be cancer, whether that, it doesn't matter. It will eventually manifest in some other way until you deal with it, if you deal with it. And I think this is it, where, Esther Hicks talks about it, as does Christy Whitman in the council. They talk about, and you just spoke about it, energy, emotions are just energy in motion. Really, that's all it is. And if you allow the wave, and Eileen McCusick talks about this in her book, Electric Body, is if you allow that wave of energy, and it's a wave, right? Just think of it like a wave. If you allow that to crest, then there's this unbelievable sense of peace and bliss and all of that juicy stuff on the other side of it. But what ends up happening is when you're getting up to that peak, most people resist it and stuff it and say, oh my gosh, and make it mean there's something bad and wrong. And if they just allow themselves to let that energy ride that wave, it takes anywhere from 60 to 90 seconds. Boom.
Yeah, and there's also this part of feeling being taken over by the emotion or losing control. And that's actually part of the process too, because as that emotional wave comes through you, it is washing clear things that no longer serve inside your being. And so maybe you have some grudges, and this wave of grief is washing clear the grudges, because that's not serving you to hold on to that. And I will confirm that if you don't face your feelings and you don't choose to feel them to heal them, what happens is disease, because it manifests in the body. For me, I had a Texas grapefruit. So think of Texas grapefruit, like that big, bigger than a softball, cyst on my ovary, on my right ovary. And they detected that 6 months after I left my marriage. I call it my marriage cyst. And so at this point I had been opening and I was like, oh my gosh, there's a thing called Reiki. Cool. Let me go get energy healing. And I went to this woman and I said, just put all the crappy ways I feel about my marriage inside that cyst, because they're going to take it out anyway. And so she did. And then when I went to the healing, I say a healing, but it was an operation to get that taken out, I was so happy in the operating room after. I was like, yay, it's out, it's gone. Like, you just took it all. And the nurses were like, who are you? Because no one's ever happy, like, after having surgery like this. Like, you're the only person. And I'm like, you don't understand. You just took my marriage of 20 years out of my body. Like, all that pain and suffering that I stuffed, you just took it in one fell swoop, gone, bye. It was so great. So there's multiple ways to purge, Jennifer. Like, it doesn't have to be hard, you can be very, very swift.
Perfect. All right, we're coming up on the hour, and I want to wrap up here. And I want to really, so for listeners, I live in the Northeast, and it's getting really cold here. So what do you recommend for grounding when it's cold out?
So there's all kinds of grounding meditations that you can do that are wonderful, that you can use your imagination. You can get really good if you practice. You can use your imagination to sink roots into the earth like you're a tree. You can get really good at like bringing your own energy field down through the foundation of the house and even down into the ground. And most people say, well, it's in my imagination. That doesn't mean it's real. It's like, well, that's the whole point. Your imagination is your soul vision. So you beyond this physical realm happens in your imagination, and you just have to trust that. And I often tell people, just suspend your disbelief and just try it, because experiential is the way that we can prove it to ourselves is by experiencing it and getting good at it. And like, you can, this is where the mind is not useful, right? Because the mind wants to have like 1,000-page reports that prove that this is working. And spirit doesn't work that way. Your energy body, your timeless one could care less about proving anything. So the way that you're going to prove it to yourself as a human being is to try it, period. Like, just practice it, try it. And then if you need something that's like more direct, like that you can believe better somehow, then take a salt bath. You know, salt baths are very, very grounding. Water is just as grounding as earth. And so you can place a bunch of salt into a bath and just sit in there, and it will help ground and calm and soothe your system. And then while you're grounding, doing the meditation or in the bath, you can place one hand over your heart and one hand just below your belly button. And what this does is it completes the energy circuit of your parasympathetic and your sympathetic nervous systems. Because if you're feeling anxious, then that is because your systems have gotten out of alignment with the earth and the harmonics of the earth. You've gotten separate again. So what you need to do is recalibrate your systems back to normal, back to harmony. And the harmony is aligned with the heartbeat of Mother Earth. And so when you get aligned back to the earth heartbeat, the earth rhythm, and because your body's made of earth, so you can do it by closing the circuit, right? Hand over heart, hand over belly, taking deep belly breaths. That's going to recalibrate your nervous system so that you're no longer in fight or flight, which is going to, fight or flight puts you in the limbic brain and the reptilian brain, which is survival brains. Where you want to be is the frontal cortex. The frontal cortex is the soul brain, is the imagination brain. And from that brain, you're going to be very relaxed and experience a beautiful existence. So this is all experiential, Jennifer, because you kind of have to prove it to yourself, you know, by trying it.
Well, here's what I love about it. You're inviting us to be childlike again and to be wondrous and curious and like, and just play with it, right? See what works for you, and you know, do what works for you. Don't do what doesn't work for you. You know, everyone's different. And so I love the advice. I love your energy. I just love that, you know, you actually had the courage to leave your marriage, walk away from psychotherapy and the pills, because otherwise I wouldn't have met you on this journey of rising and thriving and, you know, sharing our insights and wisdom to create a new world and create a better world for, you know, our children, our grandchildren, and for all of us that are here and continue to be here. So it's just been an honor and a privilege to be with you today. But close us out on, what are your words of wisdom that you would say to people that are struggling right now with mental health issues? Like, what would you say so that they could rise and thrive?
Well, one thing I would say is, I would say, be honest with yourself. Does your diagnosis give you an excuse to give up? Because if it does, then I invite you to challenge yourself on that and to decide, on my deathbed, when I look back over my life, am I happy with this book of fate handed to me and this outcome? Does this dismal outcome make me happy? And if it doesn't, I would really encourage everyone to become their own expert, become the hero of your life. Learn about the mythic story, learn about the mythic journey. I teach the mythic story in my mystery school. And the mythic map is the one where you write your own book of destiny. The mythic map is where you get your wake up call. Like, this might be your wake up call right now. Like, oh my God, Kerri Hummingbird's been through this. And she said, and she called me out and I agreed. Oh my God, I am using it as an excuse to do nothing with my life. Oh my goodness. That's a wake up call. So heed that wake up call make the great departure, leave everything that's holding you back, and take the vision quest to find out who you really are underneath all of that sad story, that sad, tragic drama. Find out who you really are, take that vision quest, and make your bid for power. And as you take that mystery school, as you enter the great spiral, you'll spiral down and in and out and up. And you'll take that journey, you'll be like me. I mean, I took the journey, Jennifer, and I could have given up anywhere along the way, but I never gave up. And here I am today. And a lot of people come to my classes, learn from me. I mean, have miraculous results of their own. So it's not even about me like sharing my story anymore. It's like, wow, what'd you do with this medicine? Cool. Let's talk about that every week. Wow. What happened for you this week with the mystery? Awesome. And you know what? It works for everyone. That's the cool thing I love, is that everybody that comes in to a mystery school, like the mystery always works for them. Isn't that amazing, Jennifer? How like the mystery always shows up? It never doesn't show up. Like it's always there. It's just you have to open to it and receive it. And get beyond your serious adult, prove it to me mindset, which is a mindset from here. And don't believe what you think and follow your heart.
It's actually from here. It's from the back of the head, right?
It's like, stop believing this thing. It is only a tool. Stop believing what it's telling you and start living courageously from your heart. And I do say courageously because sure, people are going to call you crazy or whatever, going to have opinions and judgments about you from their mind. And you just have to know that's from their mind because they're still living in mind and you're beyond mind and you're courageously trusting that there's a part of you beyond mind. And that's the epic story. That's the epic story of our times, is when you can trust yourself and thrive. And then you're going to be like me, thriving, and all these naysayers back there who like judged and threw their arrows and darts and hated me and whatever else are like sitting there. I remember my mom told me, she's like, oh my gosh, like some of these people are really like so upset with you and the family. They're like, I can't believe people are listening to her. Oh my gosh, she's so successful. She's like on a rocket ship climb. How is that possible? They were just so mad because they thought everyone would see what they saw. And it's like, no, people see my sparkling eyes and they feel my joy and my energy, and you can't fake that. That's real. That is real. I don't know how much more proof people need. That's real. Yeah. So, you know, I would say go for it. Like, forget what people think about you and follow your own heart, because at the end of the day, you're the only one going to go through that death portal, and you better be happy with the outcome that you created for yourself here on Earth.
Agreed. How can people learn more about you?
Well, let's see. Inner Medicine is coming out soon. Second Wave book is up on Amazon. And then you can go to my website to find everything, KerriHummingbird.com, Kerri Hummingbird.com, and get on my email list, because I used to be so active on social media, but I am finding it a little draining lately. And so I'm taking these breaks, and the only way to really find out what I'm doing is to get on my list. And I always send out my emails once a week and let people know what's going on. And so get on my list and find out what's up.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure speaking to you today. Thank you for sharing your courageous journey with us, and wishing you more continued success in your thriving endeavors and whatever they may be. And I can't wait to read your next book and interview you again when it comes out.
Oh, thanks, Jennifer. And blessings to everybody listening today.
Yes, blessings to all of you. So have a wonderful day, everyone. Thank you again for tuning in to the Thrive Now show. Have a great day.